Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. worldafropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for worldafropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit worldafropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. worldafropedia.com.
Breaking news now from Prince George's County, where the chief of police is responding to a racism investigation within the department. Scott Broom is live at Palmer Park. And Scott, what's this all about?
Well, it's a Department of Justice federal investigation that has just been announced late today. Chief Hank Stawinski here in the Prince George's County Police Department announced the department has been notified by the U.S. Department of Justice that the feds are opening an investigation into a complaint of alleged patterns and practices of racial discrimination and favoritism inside the department among the officers themselves, essentially an employment complaint. The complaint was made by two officers' organizations representing about 111 African American and Hispanic officers. They allege unfairness in discipline and promotions inside the department. Let me let you listen first to Joe Perez of the Hispanic Officers Association and then the response from Chief Hank Stawinski.
The main reason for the complaint is that we get fair and equitable treatment for all officers, regardless of their race. You know, if you look throughout the country, we're having all types of race issues. What makes you think that we're immune from that here in the county? You know, if you think it doesn't happen here, then, you know, you're living somewhere else, you know.
We are prepared to fully cooperate without reservation and provide any and all information that the Department of Justice requests. I hold no animus to anyone who advances a legitimate concern. My father was the president of the union of Prince George's County Police Department because of the things that he saw done wrong on this department back in the 1960s. I'm a product of that thinking. I won't stand for that. I won't tolerate an unfair work environment. I will not tolerate an injustice. I expect a lot from the men and women who do this job. I will not tolerate their believing that the environment inside the department isn't conducive to their best interest.
So some real strong statements from the chief underlining his promise for complete transparency and openness as this unfolds. I asked the complaining officers for some examples out of their complaint that they gave the Justice Department. They declined to cite any examples. You may remember back in February, the department did receive some attention after a officer caused some outrage by coming to work with a license plate on his vehicle that was derogatory towards President Obama. Stawinski at that time promptly banned that officer's vehicle from county property. Stawinski has launched an independent work group inside the department to take a look at discipline and hiring practices. That group has not produced any findings yet. The department is about 43% African American, about the same number of Anglo white officers, and the balance are Hispanic and officers from other backgrounds. About 15% are women here. Promotions up to the level of captain, which is fairly high, are dependent on exams and other performance measures that are designed to be immune to favoritism. So this is all now in the hands of the Justice Department, which is announced this afternoon. It is going to launch an investigation, and we know these Justice Department investigations take a very long time, perhaps more than a year. Reporting live in Prince George's County, Scott Broom, WUSA 9.
All right, we'll follow this closely. Scott, thank you.
Black brother hell. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Peace to Gus, the host. Peace to everybody listening. And Peace to everybody out there who cannot speak but may be listening later on in the week. It has been an amazing week. This is V from Central New York, right outside of Syracuse. I joined the program late, so I am unable to give commentary on the clips, but I just so happen to have had a couple of conversations in the previous week, over the last couple of weeks, that dealt with the controversy on kneeling during the football games, and most of them, one of them was really notable because it was after work, and a white woman, older than me, actually approached me and said, I don't want to really start anything, and so if, this is going to make you uncomfortable, please let me know, and I'll actually, you don't have to answer this, which I was kind of surprised about. But she asked me what I felt about it, and I asked her if she wanted me to be honest or to kind of sugarcoat it. And she said, no, you're pretty well spoken, so let me kind of hear it. And I said, well, in a vein of not wanting to make you angry or disrespect your family, because I know you have people who have fought in wars, I don't see the problem with, anybody kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance. It's a song for Black people. It's not our national anthem. It is white people's national anthem. She said, why would you say that? That's insane. We're all Americans. Well, not really. Then I started telling her some history, specifically how after World War I and during World War II and even after World War II, and many other wars, may I say, but definitely those ones, because Black people are often cited for their work, and especially World War II, but also more recently World War I. When Black towns were invaded by white hordes who had become enraged because, I don't know, a Black person might have looked strangely at a white woman, how some Black people, believing it would help their families, dressed in uniform, stood outside of their homes, sometimes with the stars and stripes waving behind them or on their home for protection. Those people were shot down, their homes were burned, and their families were often murdered, or if not harassed into leaving the house before it was burnt. That the service that they had, therefore, I told her, didn't prevent them from being seen as just another dead Negro or a dead nigger. And even in the Vietnam War, I further explained, Black people were literally sent to die on the front line in increased numbers by the Pentagon because they wanted to stop what they considered the spread of Black radicalism at home by getting as many young Black men to the front lines as they could. She said, that can't be true. That it is 100% true. The Pentagon has admitted it. It's very easy to check. And she said, so that's why Black people kneel. And I said, that, and also in the third stanza of the national anthem, blah, blah, blah. She said, never knew that. And I said, so what do you think? Well, I look at it a little differently. Thank you. And she walked away. I've heard nothing more of it, but I'm keeping it in the back of my mind. If that's a metaphor, I'm sorry, but I'm definitely keeping it in my memory, because some strange events have been occurring recently at work where several people have been asking me during work about racial issues and questioning me about race. And I've noticed this has increased as we have the population of non-white people have really grown over the last month. At my job, more Pacific Islanders. We now have several people from, I think it's Somalia and Sudan, and the Sudan working there. And so we went from pretty much 2 black people and 2 Filipinas to, I think now we're up to about 15 or 20 non-white people working on the floor with us. So I've noticed this increase in fervor, and I'm thinking what's probably what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a circumstance where I'm saying things where then they can go and report them, and then I'd have to have a talk, and then if there's enough talk, maybe I'll get fired, because a lot of these non-white people tend to have some respect for me, and I've been told this by many of them, that they see me as somebody who can help them. So I'm definitely conscious of that, and I really owe that consciousness a lot to this show. This really helped me and made me realize that a lot of things I was thinking, it wasn't because I was crazy. So thank you, Gus. When my finances are finally taken care of, when the problems that I've been having recently finally handled, I plan on definitely supporting the show. Again, thank you very much for the work that you do. Peace to you and peace to your home.
Appreciate that. I think we talked about that on Workplace Racism, Thursday's Workplace Racism, bringing up some of these issues and talking about that on the job. I said it might be good to have a code for that too. If you get asked about either the anthem protests or Trump or, whatever aspect of it, to have a code in terms of what you say, what you don't say, particularly on the job. My recommendation would be to have as little to say as possible if it's a white person or a non-white person. I think that came up this past week too. Even talking to another black person on the job can be dangerous given the circumstances. But Thursday, Workplace Racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, October 5th, 2017, so I have been told. This is, as previously stated, Thursday's weekly Workplace Racism. This broadcast is exclusively designed to focus on problems that we encounter in the workplace, to share strategies to neutralize workplace racism, all of the tactics that are put in place to keep us from getting promotions, raises, tactics put in place to get us write-ups and unjust terminations, demotions, all of that, to stop all of that so that we can have a little bit more peace while we are on the plantation and get our coins, go about our business in a constructive manner. We always encourage, if we have black entrepreneurs, non-white entrepreneurs, you are quote-unquote self-employed, please dial in. Share with us how being self-employed alters, changes, improves your workplace setting, especially as it relates to whites. If you have figured out strategies to neutralize racist activity in the workplace, you should be the first person to dial in. Hey, I have figured out this is what to do, this is what to say, this is what not to do, this is what to wear in order to minimize your problem with whites and even some non-white people on the job. You will get your raises. You'll get all of the transfers you need, vacation time, whatever it is. This is what to do. As long as you want to work there, things will be fine. If you have figured out how to do that, or even how to do parts of that successfully, as I said, you should be one of the first people to dial in. The number 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. I had a lovely jog in Seattle today. Man, if it was not for the system of white supremacy, I would say, man, I've really enjoyed Seattle this summer, even though it's now autumn, but it was sunny and felt like summertime even today. That notwithstanding, the number again, 641-715-3640. 3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. As always, this is not a broadcast for spectators. You got lots of options. I think Thursday Night TV is back. Shonda Rhimes, lots of offerings, sporting activities, lots to choose from if you're just looking to be entertained for a while with the tribulations, problems of Black people on their specific jobs. No, this is not for you. This is for folks to participate, particularly if you are a Black person and you have a work history. Share. I think that's important. I think that's one way that we can learn about racism, white supremacy. Whites are doing a lot of the same things on the job. And I know it's not fun to tell the world about how we have been terrorized on the job. But as I said, I do think it's constructive. And I also think we can figure out strategies to neutralize some of the things that are happening to us on the job. I think it just takes using logic, doing the same thing that racists do, using logic and just paying attention to some of the patterns in terms of how whites function on the job. If you are not able to participate via phone, you can email if you have concerns, about being identified or what have you. We can read your commentary anonymously. My email untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. And as I said, we can read your commentary on the air. We can do so anonymously. A few folks already wrote in, so I'll read their comments as we go. I did have a few notes before I read a comment or two. Number one, from the audio clips that we heard, the officers who were submitting their report about mistreatment in Prince George's County, I believe that's Maryland. Number one, the word fair. Wow, it was used a lot in that report where you talked about that use of that term and how it supports white supremacy on this broadcast for years. Mr. Fuller has talked about that term for decades, particularly in the workplace. I would strongly advise against using that term. You want to be talking about just treatment in the workplace, doing things in a correct manner. Those are the type words you want to use, not they're not treating me fairly, or something is unfair. That's not the type of terms we want to use. And we also don't want to use the term complaint, in my view. I think Mr. Fuller has talked about that, might have even played a sound clip where he talks about avoiding terms like grievance, gripe, complaint. He said that just that type of language, it puts one in the thinking that this is not a serious report of wrongdoing, that this is something childish, something minor, something trivial. Maybe you just got your feelings hurt, and that's not the way that you want to present. You want to report wrongdoing, malfeasance. You want to use language that conveys, hey, something criminal might have taken place. Everyone should be focused on getting this problem solved immediately. That's the type of language that we want to use in the workplace. I played an audio segment of Mr. Fuller from some years ago, more than 20 years ago. He was talking about how he thought more and more the strategy was going to be you get an attorney, file some sort of suit for workplace racism, and they just tie you up in courts for years and years and years, and you pay money, and we're working on it. He said that in the audio segment. I played that clip about the officers, and they said, oh, we think this is, it's going to take more than a year, so, could be a long time. I said, wow, I just played that. For sure, we talked about that before, and I've heard Mr. Williams talk about that's something that you need to have in mind if you start that process of making a report and saying, hey, this is something serious, and do we need to, however you decide to pursue it, if an attorney is going to be involved, that, hey, this could be something that I'm involved in for the next 5 years. Am I prepared for that? And to be honest about that, because if you're not, then that changes your strategy for how you want to deal with things. Just being truthful about that, because I mean, that does happen a lot. It generally is not an overnight solution. Also, we had Walter Beach III on the program yesterday. We talked a lot about his career in the NFL, workplace racism, certainly. He talked in detail about getting in trouble with the white owner of the Cleveland Browns because on a plane ride, the art model, who's now deceased, caught him reading Elijah Muhammad's message to the black man in America. And he did not approve. And he told Walter Beach III, what are you doing with that book? I do not approve. You put that book down. And Walter Beach continued reading, and then he came back and chided him again about reading that book. Anyway, we have talked about that on this program before, not leaving books around in your work environment. I even say I would not read in your work environment around white people because they are nosy. They will pay attention to that sort of thing. And, oh, you got Elijah Muhammad's book. Oh, you got Dr. Welsig's book. Oh, they will see that and immediately. I have a friend. She testified. She was on this program, in fact. She testified. She got a copy of Mr. Fuller's code book mailed to her job. The package was opened, and her white coworkers at a Christian school, no less, said, "Oh my goodness, we're so sorry. Your package arrived open. The postal carrier said that a rat got into it. So we just, we glanced at it." Even she hadn't read Mr. Fuller's code book and was suspicious of my quote unquote radical militant talk. Even she did not believe that excuse. That's what I mean. I would be very careful about bringing literature to your job. If you absolutely got to have it, maybe leave it in the trunk. Definitely don't leave it out and about. I would keep it on your person, in your sight at all times, and not even face up. Try to get a book cover. That's what I've recommended. Have a book cover. That way there's no identifying information, and you can keep it in a bag, keep it in something so that it's just not visible. Because race soldiers, just that sort of thing can be a problem for you on the job. Continuing. The sound clip. That was from the second sound clip, the caller talking about the white woman asking his opinion about the protests. That was from the compensatory call-in this past weekend. And I can only say I'm so thankful that he dialed in and shared. That's how we learn. I am still learning. But that is something that we've talked about on this program that I've recommended with regards to workplace racism for years. We're not talking about racism on the job. We're not talking about racism with black people. We're not talking about racism with white people. Whatever code you need to figure out, I don't talk about politics on the job. Whatever it is, whatever wording you are comfortable with, that needs to be a part, like a foundational part of the code. Not talking about racism on the job, even if a white person asks, because in my view, white people do that sort of thing. Caller in Florida, that white woman was running an experiment and might still be. That's the way that racists function on the job. They will ask a question just to get you talking. And it sounds like this person, victim of racism, it sounds like this person might have been talking for a long time. This white person could have had a recorder, anything, just looking to fish something out of context. And it sounds like that's exactly what she did. In my view, processing that the way that I understand what it means to be white, when he said that, and then he said things began to be strange. To me, it was not strange at all. That is predictable. I said before, white people, they network like no other. To me, I would expect that white woman to go and tell as many other white women as possible. Can you believe what this nigga said? He sat over here and boasted and is informed. I think we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Man, the things that he said, can we keep some notes? That's the exact sort of conversation that I would expect her to have and replicate it, if not them exchanging text messages about you throughout the building, perhaps even after hours. That's how I've seen white people function worldwide. And even beyond workplace, I would recommend we should never be in a position of trying to inform or educate a white person about history. I think we should take the position just based on counter-racist logic. I think it's always correct to think that the white person knows more about the system of white supremacy than you do if you are a victim of racism. But certainly on the job, no, that's not what we're here to do. And this conversation is not going to be to my benefit at all. Continuing, I think, and in that same vein, certainly, as I've said, we should have a code about the protests. If a question gets asked about that, if a question gets asked about Trump, even former President Obama, there should be a code about O.J. Simpson as well. Now that he's been released, any talk of that comes up. I don't talk about politics. That's not even something that I'm concerned about. I think another popular one, I haven't really kept up with that. What do you think? Immediately deflect to a question and get them talking so that you can, that's interesting. I'll have to look into it. I'm going to have to get back to it. There you go. And that's it. That's the way that I would handle those type of, and anything else that you think this is not really pertaining to the job and not something that I want to discuss. That's the way that I would handle it. Next, I was going to read a few of the notes, but I'll go ahead and get to some of the callers, and I'll just weave in the written commentary that folks submitted already. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Again, encourage folks, if you dialed in to share before, if you could update us, that is always appreciated. That helps us refine our code. That way we know what things work, what things do not work, regardless of what strategy you implement. Just giving us updates is very helpful and appreciated. And I just want to emphasize quickly, in my view, just two fundamental tenets. We all have VGQ. Everyone should be coming up with their own independent way of functioning in a counter-racist manner on the job. That said, I think that two just crucial aspects of any workplace counter-racism code must include successfully and consistently controlling your emotions and not talking about racism. You can talk about producing justice, no problem. You can talk about doing things correctly, no problem. We are not having conversations about racism, white supremacy, the history of that in this country. That is not in my view, that is not something to be discussed with black people or white people at work. It's just not the time. And I would even be hesitant, even outside of work hours, having that conversation with a non-white person. That would not be the case ever with someone classified as white. But even with a non-white person, if I worked with them, I would be very hesitant. I think this came up last week because I would just assume if it's a coworker, I would assume anything that I say to this person could be repeated, transcribed to every single employee that we work with. So if I'm not willing to say it to everybody, I'm not going to say it to this person ever at work after hours. But just in my view, those are two critical aspects, because in my view, if you fail on those two, everything else can not really matter. If you don't keep your cool at work, if you can be upset, if white people can do things to get you up to a point where you get angry and lash out and respond emotionally, the rest of it can not matter very quickly. I mean, that can be your whole career in a matter of seconds. And in my view, the same thing with talking about racism. That, can end up causing a whole lot of problems, just unnecessarily, with something that can be easily avoided. I don't talk about politics on the job. Back to work. Just my view. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary on any of the commentary that I've shared thus far, if I'm talking crazy, feel free to share. Certainly, if you have successful strategies or problems, we would like to hear. If you have a hand up, feel free.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Gus. Thomas in New York. Just wanted to say, man, what you just said, the best thing, in my opinion, to do, especially in these times, uncharted territory of white people talking about racism and saying white supremacy, is, get into your question lane immediately. As soon as they ask you, what do you think about this? I don't know. What do you think? And let them, tell you their thoughts, and try to obfuscate the conversation. As soon as you hear what you need to hear, bring up something else, another topic, something work-related that they have to answer, but, try your best. I try not to reveal my standpoint to these people. I want to know theirs, and then I'm off to the races with someone else. I switched the topic. I got to go. I'll see you later. So I just thought that was great advice that you gave, and I'll meet my line. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening to everyone. Haven't called in a while, but I'd just like to share a workplace racism example that was given to me by a non-white black female. I know all of the people that were involved, but it was very interesting to me. So I work in a military facility, in a healthcare facility. So it's a military healthcare facility. And in the military, I'm sure most people may know, but you have officers who are, more of the leadership, the more educated, and then you have the enlisted personnel who are more, I guess, less educated, less leadership. But, so you have a big dividing line between the personnel. So in this facility, there's a enlisted non-white black male who is he's kind of a supervisor, so to speak, but it really doesn't have any real power. But he's a so-called, they gave him the label as a supervisor, and he's but he's not really supervising at the time. He's really just being a receptionist at the front desk. So he's checking, the patients in, telling them to have a seat. He's kind of monitoring the actual healthcare provider or the doctor to see if to see how things are going, and making sure that the patient is getting whoever is next up to be seen by the doctor. He makes sure that they get in. So he's just kind of coordinating it a little bit. So anyway, so there's a young lower ranking officer, white male. White male that comes in and has a seat, and the doctor is seeing other patients, and there's several people ahead of this young white male officer. So as time moves on, I guess this white male got angry because he perceived that the black male had a patient that came in after this white male and had him to be seen by the doctor in front of him. So this white male got mad. He got, upset at the black male. It was like, hey, don't you ever have me out here waiting in this waiting area this long. What are you doing here? So the healthcare provider, the doctor, another white male, who's, in charge of that whole facility at the time, I guess he overheard this white male talking to the black male. So later on, he kind of admonished the white male. Was like, hey, don't you ever talk to my staff that way. It's not his fault. Don't you talk to my staff that way. Okay, so the black male heard that he overheard this, and then the white male patient, the officer, he went somewhere. He left the immediate area. And the black male went up to the white male doctor and was like, "Oh, thank you for sticking up for me." That guy was, he was being a jerk, so to speak. And but later the white officer came back and was seeing the doctor that had kind of admonished them for speaking up to the black male like that. And then it appeared that they were kind of joking around and having a good time, like they had made amends. I guess they talked about it. So the black male the black female that told me the story said that the two white males talked about it and were like, "Hey, are we good? Do you understand what's going on? I have to tell you about that." And the white males, the lower ranking officer, was like, "Oh, okay, no problem. Everything's cool. No big deal. Sorry about that." And then later on, like shortly afterwards, these guys are joking like they're old buddies, man. Like they, old pals from way back. Like nothing had ever happened. So I thought that was very interesting that, don't you say anything to my, my workers or my niggers. And, then we just understand that, hey, we're both white, we're both in power, no big deal. We just have to put on a show for everyone else. And then another example for me is I'm going to have a new supervisor or whatever, white male, and he hasn't he hasn't taken over as the supervisor yet, but he will be very soon. But he was making a visit to the facility that I work at. Then we had an incident a while back, which I think he was practicing racism. But anyway, he came to me and was like, "Good morning." And a lot of times I know some people's code is to speak. Sometimes I'm really working on that because a lot of times I really don't want to speak to these suspected racists. But and then he said, "Hey," he asked me where someone's office was. He said, "Where's so-and-so's office?" Now, mind you, we are in a very small building. I'm sure he's been over to that building before. So I believe he's asking me a question that he already knows the answer to. But, I tell him, "Hey, it's over here." I give him directions. Again, very small building. And then he's like kind of acting like he was confused. Again, this is a higher ranking officer in the military, white male, doctor. And he's asking me like we work in a maze or something. It was a very, very small building. So I tell him again, I repeat something. He's, "Oh, okay, over here. Oh, okay." And then he just stands there and he looks at, and I'm like, what does he want? I'm thinking, what does he want? And he says, "Oh, I have something to ask you. I had something to ask you." And he just stood there again. I'm just looking at him, waiting for like, "Okay, go ahead. What do you?" And then he stood there for about 15 seconds or so, and he said, "Oh, I'll ask you later." And then, he went about his way, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll be here. I mean, you know where I'm at." And but then again, he never asked me anything after that. So I don't know. I think he was just he was running a little experiment on me just to see, my response, or kind of study me to see what type of person I am. But that's all I have for now. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing. It's just some of the quick thoughts that I had, and then if other people, if they have anything that they think is important that they want to share. With the first segment that you shared about, I guess the one white male being rude or nasty to the black doctor about having him wait, and then the white doctor comes in and fusses at him or what have you, and then the two white guys make up and are having fun with each other a few minutes later. I think it's important. Um, it victims of white supremacy. We have been groomed to think that there are tons of great, wonderful, good, not racist white people. So often it doesn't take a whole lot if a white person is kind to us momentarily. Sometimes we can think, oh, this person is not racist, and that's not the case at all. You can have, a raping enslaver. They can have a moment of kindness and give you a bar of soap. That doesn't mean, anything has changed about the plantation or that you are no longer going to be raped. It just means they gave you a bar of soap. That happens frequently. As you said, when you are confused about what it means to be white, that momentary act of kindness a lot of times can be blown way out of proportion and can just really disarm us from having a correct understanding of an enemy. With the second situation, where I think it reminded me, Thomas in New York, I think we talked about this, if not last week, very recently, where he had a white coworker, I think it was a female, where she was asking him questions that she already knew, or was just asking him unnecessary questions, and he felt it was her practicing racism, and just as a means of control. That I'm a higher up, I have more authority than you on this job, and just I'm white in a system of white supremacy, so I can ask you these questions to waste your time, and you have to answer me. Like I can command you to respond, to my questions, and even to just waste your time. Like I think he was saying that he was just standing there like, oh, I had something to ask you, and just wasting your time. Oh, I'll ask you later. I mean, just nonsense. Even the question that he asked, you're in this really tiny building, he acts like he's lost. I think they do that sort of thing on a regular basis as a way to practice racism. They're just exercising their authority and even consuming our time. I think some of that might echo delectable Negro, but I'll hush there. Any thoughts from other folks who had a hand up on what we just heard?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I did have one to share. I have a coworker, not a direct coworker of mine, but someone that works in the hospital with me. And generally, when I'm cleaning the lobby, which isn't often, every other weekend that guy's off, and I kind of take that spot. And maybe the other day he's off during the week. So 3 days out of the 2-week cycle, I have to do the lobby. And around 5 o'clock in the morning, we get off at 7. He comes to the lobby and goes to the cafeteria and sits in the back. So he, pretty much sits down the last 2 hours. So he didn't have anything to do, kind of hides. And so he starts asking me questions one day. And when white people ask me these sets of questions, I kind of get along the lines of where they're trying to ask me. So he says, you live in New York. So I said, yeah. He said, what part? I said, I live in the city. And he says, oh, you live in the city? I'm like, yes. He says, what borough is that? I'm like, Manhattan. So he's like, oh, I only ask because I'm from Staten Island, but where exactly do you live out in the city? Because it's kind of expensive over there. So by then I had started getting back to work and ignoring him, right? So that was months ago. So just last week, he comes over. He starts with the whole same set of questions. So I said he wants to finish his conversation from 2 months ago. He wants to know, exactly where you live at in the city, because you can't afford to live there. Like it's that kind of question. So it was just when the guy was like the questions that these people asked for, just the actual dumb questions to waste your time, so they could waste their time. So he got into the line of questions. So we ended up going through the whole question thing again. And then he had the audacity after I finally said, "Oh yeah, I live uptown, I live in Harlem." Oh, okay. But how much you pay for rent up there? Like, who asks who? Like, I mean, I expect that from black people, but it's like, so I said, "Well, where do you live?" So, I'm in Staten Island. I said, "Oh, you told me that you have a house." So he's like, "Yeah, oh, okay. How much is your mortgage?" "Oh, it's not, he didn't want to answer. So it kind of left it at that. I didn't answer him, he didn't answer me. But the point is they always want to, I think they look at the same way when the show first started, I said, when they ask you a question, turn it right around and ask them questions, because they're only asking questions so they could better practice racism anyway. It's just so they could be a more efficient racist, have a little bit more information under their belt so they could practice it on you or someone else later. If that makes sense. But just look out for the questions. They're always trying to ask them.
Thomas in New York, appreciate that. Any of the other folks with a hand up, you all have thoughts on what listeners have shared thus far? Or if you have your own situation.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I just want to kind of piggyback on what Thomas in New York said concerning the questions, because I was just thinking about that this week at work and about the small talk. And I've noticed a lot of the nature of these questions can be informative, but I was just thinking and doing like Neely Foolish, I just followed the logic, and I just kept thinking. I said, well, what is the purpose of these questions? Do you have family? Where you from? Did you go to school? These are, I've concluded that the purpose of these questions is it's almost like a game of playing who has higher rank, because then they can establish how it is they're going to treat you from there on out. And so that is what I have concluded when those kinds of questions that are not necessarily work related and what appears to be small talk is just about how they're going to determine how they are going to mistreat you. And regarding the other caller who was dealing with things in the military and with the officers, I'm not sure if that individual is enlisted or not, but for those who do not know, that can be a really, really challenging a place of employment to navigate because of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. And for anyone who has had experience in the military, they will tell you that the Uniform Code of Military Justice is there to keep integrity of the military and to protect you. But it is often used with that word that is used with regular law, which is discretion, which means that it will not be applied equally, will not be applied the same way in all cases. It almost seems like it just depends upon how who is in position of authority to apply it, just how and whenever they feel like it, and there's not much recourse. So for the male who's in that environment, just be very aware as much as you can. That's all I have to say.
Appreciate that. Other folks have feedback on what we've heard thus far?
May I proceed?
Oh, yes, sir.
Can I be heard properly, or is it a little low?
Just keep your volume up. Speak with black self-respect, and we should be able to hear you.
Right on. Thank you. Yes, greetings to the caller and to the host. Regarding the caller who I guess was saying his experience in the military regarding the patient who was, I find that common for white people to, behind closed doors, always make amends. I think it's just always helpful to remember that all white people should be seen as suspects, and that's just more evidence of it, but I'm happy that he shared that example. I wanted to share a little bit of my workplace racism experience. I am self-employed. I was working on a property, and I really hate to use that word, and I need to find another word to describe how I'm employed, because self-employed is just it's disgustingly inefficient way to describe that condition. I think victim would be the best way to describe my employment status. I'm a freelance victim. I was working on a property. My attempted spouse is expanding her business, and the owner of the shopping strip contracted me to do renovations on her space. Next door, they are doing some construction, and the tattoo parlor, which is majority patrons are white, some type of Celtic style of tattoo. They moved, and they're actually now next door to the yoga studio. So now we're in close proximity to racist suspects, where we had an empty space on both sides. They're next door to it. So while I was doing some of the remodeling work, I was removing some trash from the building, putting up with more white people. There were some white tenants that were in the space that I was cleaning, and they completely trashed it. So, of course, the non-white person has to clean up after them. And while I was throwing the garbage away, I was filling up my trailer. Well, one day I came back to my trailer in the morning, and I noticed there was a couple of boxes of fried chicken, I guess trash, and some beer bottles and some pizza boxes in the back of my trailer. And so I thought that was kind of strange. I was like, like who would put their trash? There's a trash can less than 10 feet away from my trailer, a dumpster. That's why I'm happy. So someone decided that they were just going to throw their pizza, trash, and beer bottles in the back of my trailer. I'm assuming that they saw that I was filling up my trailer to take it to the dumpster over a period of days. I came back a couple of days later. Oh, just to clarify, I actually took the trash out, and I believe that it came from the people at the tattoo parlor, because I had seen there's no one else in the back, and I had seen them drinking beer previously. So I removed the bottles and put them outside of their door along with the trash. A few days later, I come back, and not only is there trash in the back of my trailer again, different trash, there's a barbecue pit sitting next to my trailer, a chair on my trailer, seasonings, and a bag of charcoal on my trailer. They were outside barbecuing, and they literally were using my trailer as like a shelf. So there were seasonings and then just throwing their trash in the back. So when I came in that morning, I took the chair off the side, and I kind of just threw everything in the parking lot, just like chucked it right in the middle of the parking lot. I was going to roll over the barbecue pit, but I decided, since it wasn't on the trailer, I wasn't going to. I was very upset. The owner of the tattoo parlor saw me later on while I was filling the trailer up, and I asked him, I said, do you know whose trash that was? He's like, yeah, it was mine. And he said, I didn't have to, you didn't have to throw it in the middle of the lot. And I would just say, hey, man, just keep your stuff off my trailer. He happens to be, I believe, in some type of sexual relationship with a young Asian, non-white, so-called Asian woman. So, I mean, for me, total racist, not even going to give him a false sex status anymore, because they are in some form of sexual relationship. And she happens to be watching the whole thing. I could care less. It was probably imprudent of me to be so aggressive with him, but I just really got tired. I just really wasn't going to have it that morning, and it just got heated. We kind of stepped towards each other, but I guess he just wasn't really having it that morning. He didn't want anything that morning. But ever since then, I haven't had any trash on my trailer. My trailer has been unmolested, and until a week ago, I came to do work at the space, and there was a pile of trash in front of my door. Apparently, some other contractors had cleaned out another space and had dumped all of their trash in front of my door, my exit door to the back of the studio space. I believe that they were likely practicing racism, and they might have been helped by the racist next door. He might have told them to put the trash in front of my door. I proceeded to remove the trash, but I just, we just have to constantly be visual. I've decided to take pictures and send a letter to the property manager, and hopefully we'll have some form of resolution. I mean, all I want is just not to be molested while I'm working, but of course racists are going to do what they do. I'll take my call offline. Thank you.
Right on. Appreciate it. Hang on one second, Thomas in New York. I just wanted to say really quick that I'm sorry you've had to deal with all of that stress. That's why I always encourage folks to dial in who are quote unquote self-employed, because I do think sometimes people talk as though if you are an entrepreneur, you don't have to deal with white supremacy any longer, and that is just not true. Doesn't mean that it won't improve things for you. It just means that you are still going to have to deal with white supremacy. It'll just be in a different manner. That said, with your situation, I guess the thing that I thought of is, I think Thomas in New York has said this. I think that was he that just spoke. With just epidemic heroin use and white drug use, I think he was saying that there probably will be more instances of just random white violence. Some of what we've seen, but it'll probably be more of that because you're going to have lots of just drugged out white people, and that's what it seemed like could have been some of the whites that could have been involved in this situation, terrorizing you and your property. My thinking was kind of related to what I said before about keeping our cool, and even I recall Mr. Fuller saying, "Hey, I'm not against counter violence." That's Mr. Fuller talking, me as well. I'm not against counter violence. It's just if we're going to resort to counter violence, you want it to be on your terms. That I've planned this out ahead of time. This is the moment, the time that I'm going to resort to counter violence, not in response to somebody else's plan where they are provoking this, where this was not planned, if you can help it, unless it's in direct self-defense. And a lot of times, terrorists, they're committing acts of violence against us. This is, violence against your property, against you, doing this repeatedly. But just those sort of situations, you just never know what type of race soldier you're being confronted with. If he's got others waiting, I think I talked about that this past weekend, if he's got others waiting with him, if this is an enforcement official in plain clothes, you just never, is he armed? You just never know the type of person that you are dealing with if it is someone classified as white. So I think that's reason enough to be very cautious and to really tread lightly in dealing with these situations as best that we can. That said, you handled it as best you could in that situation. And I'm not surprised. This is one where I would expect this to become like a vendetta, where as long as you're there, as long as they're there, they're going to be committing acts of violence against you and your property, and probably networking with other whites to just do these sort of things against you and your property. And taking pictures, documenting and taking pictures from the beginning. I think that is great. And even contacting enforcement officials the same way that they make a paper trail on us, doing the exact same thing. And that way you can go to the property manager with police reports, because that's criminal activity. I would go with police reports about these things, pictures, and that way you can go to the property manager, and that might help them be more motivated to get things done. Thomas in New York, were you going to respond, sir?
I think you hit it on the head, Gus. I was going to say, you started off the show earlier saying you can't be emotional at all. No emotions. They get off on your good emotions and your bad emotions. Just to see you pissed off, man. He as soon as he got away from you, he was just laughing himself off. He got his rush of the day. You're in the right. Take pictures, like Gus just said. I would invest in just way too much good technology out there today. One of those little cameras that you put outside your door, like a Nest or Google Home has one. Where up to the second, as soon as someone walks past your door, your phone is beeping, and you get to see the motion sensor, you get to see who's leaving garbage or whatever. You own a business. God forbid if you had some work done in there and someone went in there and sabotaged it in the name of white supremacy. you would be able to say, hey, this is the guy I see these people with this guy all the time. I mean, you have to protect yourself, especially as a black business owner. I mean, you have to be prepared for the worst, and the worst being white people. And so that means you have to prepare for everything, because the last thing they want to see is a successful black business. This next time, no emotions. You would have hit that man, or it would have went down. If he would have hit you even, you would have went to jail. The judge would have been white, more than likely. He would have been a racist. He would have been doing the sentencing. The person who you leased the place from is probably a racist. You probably would have got evicted. It would have just went totally left field on you real quick. So control your emotions. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Thomas in New York. Any other folks have suggestions or commentary? Always easier doing what they call Monday morning quarterbacking, but I do think it's important to review, and if folks have thoughts or suggestions, that's important. We're all still learning. Any other commentary on what we just heard?
May I be heard?
Greetings, Red in Ohio.
Hello, and hello, everyone. I did have I definitely appreciate the last caller, not the one who shared the story, the contractor. And I definitely agree with what everyone else said. And I was actually able to practice being calm. I recently quit my job. I just felt like I just couldn't take it anymore. And I feel like because I have been trying to learn more, and I guess it kind of makes sense, is, like people, they say like the microaggressions. And I feel like it's not just, it's kind of weird, because that's what I felt like finally happened. And I saw it, basically I went through the same thing that the other black female had went through at the job, and she ended up leaving. She obtained all this knowledge, was very helpful to the company, but, just having to just deal with, these suspected racists, she finally decided to leave. And so I'm also taking that same path. I am going to be going back to school. I'm actually going to be moving and then going back to school, so that way I can and eventually start my own business. And I definitely understand that that's not necessarily going to end my interactions with racists, but I mean, I'm just willing to do anything at this point. But just a few things that happened with my with my termination, because I actually quit. I put in the notice, and the supervisor, he basically didn't tell the other people in the area that, I was quitting, and I gave him a specific date. So it gets down to probably about, I would say maybe a day or so before it's my last day. Actually, to rewind, he had sent out an email to the people in my group saying that, he was going to redistribute the work, and that my name was not included in the list. And it made me think about everything that we talk about on the show, about how white people, they study us constantly, even if, they may seem nice, but and even if I kind of felt like, obtaining, knowledge about other people, what they do and everything like that, I kind of feel like that's useless, but to them, it has a purpose. They have time to, worry about what everybody else is doing. And a white person contacted me. They're like, "Oh, I don't see you on this list. What's going on? Did I miss something?" So I did end up telling that person, yes, I am going to quit. And then they were like, "Oh, well, I, wish you the best," or whatever. But, my supervisor did not send out an email to the rest of the group, because the white person who contacted me, they were a part of this group too. But he waited until, like I said, a day before. And the tacky part about it was that it was supposed to, the email was supposed to go out to the team, but he just sent it to me. And so I had to tell him, like, you just sent it to me. Did you intend on sending it to the team? He was like, "Oh," and then he just went ahead and forwarded it to the team, saying, "Oh, well, and it was basically really, really short. I was with the company for several years, and so I didn't expect, like I said, just learning and preparing myself not to feel hurt or anything, because throughout the time that I was there, the suspected racist, they would try to make me feel as if, I was just such an asset to the company, and I always kept it in the back of my mind. This is what they're telling me, but that's not something that I'm really, believing, especially once I started to try to read more about racism and what have you. So, very short, she's quitting. She's been with the company this long, and, we wish her the best. That's fine, whatever. I didn't care, but I also had to then reach out to him. Is there like an exit interview process? What about this? What about that? My pay and everything. What am I supposed to do with the equipment that I was able to use at the times that I did work from home? So I asked him all the questions, and I did make sure to email all those questions, like my resume and everything to myself, because I kept it within like the company's system. But I kept updating it because I kept moving from different areas. So I went ahead and did that. And the last thing there was two other things. Another higher up boss, when I saw them for my last day to turn in the equipment, they're like, oh, well, nobody told me. And just kind of like this real fake, sincere voice. And she was, trying to make it seem like, oh, well, she was kind of, I guess, somewhat, ashamed or embarrassed that no one told her or whatever, and also giving me these quote unquote well wishes. And I just kind of, gave her somewhat of that same act back. The last thing is when I was trying to return this equipment, and this was the part where I did actually have to remain calm, and I felt like I guess I could have did a little bit better, but I'm definitely not as bad as I was before. There were two. I had to return it to the security desk. There's a white man and a non-white male. And I told them, hey, this is my last day. I just need some help getting the equipment out of my car. And they're like, oh, well, you're going to have to take it to another building. And, just being calm, like, no, this is where my supervisor and also the, this higher up, this upper management person told me to bring it to. They're like, no, this is, and when I was first speaking, I was speaking to basically the non-white male. He was still, very calm, kind of like, I don't know, kind of like soft-spoken. But the white man kind of stepped up and was more direct and almost kind of rude. And that's when I kind of gave him some of the rudeness back. Like, no, you're basically like, you're just security. And I'm not going to then drive this to, another location 10 miles away, whatever. So let me go ahead and ask you again, you want to help me get this equipment out of my car? So eventually, he did have to, and he was angry too. I could see it on his face. He did actually help me to get the equipment out of my car. And then, so that was my end of my most recent employment. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Back to the question lane. Big time advocate of that when things. Back to the question lane. After all the tackiness and what have you, back to the original problem, getting, this device out of the vehicle. I know Mr. Fuller has talked about that pretty often as well, in terms of that being the plan to just, keep black people on the move, racial dislocation, so we don't have housing, and then keeping us on the move job-wise. Certainly, black mental health is paramount. So if you're in a work situation that is toxic, this was supposed to be something temporary, and you're supposed to be finding something better, healthier, then that's what to do. But I do think it's important just to remind folks that is the exact plan that racists have outlined, according to Neely Fuller Jr., to just keep us bouncing from job to job to job to job, and making that as stressful, making those transitions as stressful as possible. Did folks have commentary on what we heard from Red or any of our other callers thus far?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. 2812. Hope everybody's doing good. I had a couple workplace racism situations. I'll start with the one yesterday. I got off code, and we were having a conference call, kind of going over your business and your what we call our quote unquote pipeline, and transactions and clients you have, and just making sure things are on track. And so we got to one transaction, and the quote unquote manager heard how I was structuring something, and he said that is incorrect, and I can't do that. And I asked a couple of questions about, I said, well, the guidelines say this, such and such, blah, 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 so forth and so on. And he was like, well, no, I don't know why you would even think to do that. Like, that's incorrect. And I got emotional. I was going to use incorrect words. I got emotional, but I didn't get emotional yelling. My tone changed immediately. And it was very serious. And I believe what I said was that, I've been doing this a while, and I don't believe that how I structured this is incorrect. And I said, it's bothering me that every time, because this isn't the first time that this happened, is that every time I do something this particular way with asking questions, I'm getting inaccurate information. So the manager then says, oh, I'm sorry, the call is quiet. Now, mind you, there's 4 people on this call. One of them is non-white. That's me. The other 3 are white people. And so the call is just quiet. And then we end it, and you could tell after the call, like literally, they just like, oh my gosh, I've never heard this speak that way, because typically that's not how I get. But it, for some reason, I think it was him might even just questioning me, and whatever it was, it just got to me. And so then after the call, the situation actually gets rectified because we can actually do exactly what I was saying. And I was like, oh, well, I was correct. And it didn't come from the manager. It came from my assistant. And he was like, oh, yeah, the guidelines do say that we can actually do this. So we just got to send an email over here. We'll get it taken care of. Blah, 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 so forth and so on. But then I started thinking, and I said, should I don't want a bullseye on my back. I'm just being honest. I don't want a bullseye on my back. Is what you did incorrect? And I told myself yes. So then the manager calls me back about something totally offline. And I said to him specifically, I said, I wanted to apologize for my tone on that call. This is the reason I got frustrated. And I said, that's not something that I do frequently. And I didn't, that's exactly what I did. And, before, I would probably say that I would probably tell myself, oh, don't suck up to these people, but I did not want that. Even though it might even be their perception of me, I still wanted to at least try to do something to say, okay, you know what? You still have to continue to deal with these people on a daily basis. And so I thought that was the right thing to do. I could be incorrect, but it was rectified. The manager came back and said, hey, it's fine, even though I know it's not, because I could even tell when he was talking to me, like, I don't even believe, like, I didn't realize you talk like this. You're very friendly. That's what his tone was saying. He was like, you're very friendly. You're really easy to get along with, but he's never heard me speak in that particular manner. So I knew it kind of perked himself up. But I could also tell that he was kind of looking for me to address it or say something too. So I'm not going to say that it was 100% the correct thing to do, but I thought that me at least acknowledging that I made a poor choice was a good decision. The second thing was we had a meeting this morning, and I talked about this frequently. I quote unquote, I'm supposed to be in charge of some group. This morning we had a small group, only non-white male in the room, and we go around and we're talking about business, and somebody was in business and they are doing things to help hurricane relief or whatever. And so I always try to keep everything on topic, but we didn't stay totally on topic. And then we got in the realm of speaking about Puerto Rico, and what I had said was, I said, yeah, those people need help there. And the woman sitting next to me says, yeah, they don't even have an infrastructure down there. We've got to go back to colonization to help them. And I just kind of looked at her, And and it was because the word caught me so off guard that I even wanted to ask her what did she mean by that, but the meeting was over, and I just left and I said, I wonder if she knew. And I said, matter of fact, I know she knew what she meant by that. Non-white people don't know what to do with themselves. We've got to go down there and clean them up. And I just found it was amazing that, we're in a business meeting, but this woman specifically used the word colonization to talk about going and helping people in Puerto Rico. And that's all I got. And I'll mute my mind. Thanks, guys.
Indeed. I had a quick question, but just that is what it means to be white. Like you're just looking for opportunities to terrorize and dominate. But my question in the first situation that you talked about, and definitely appreciate you dialing in to share that, because it takes some courage to speak out and, admit publicly, I messed this up. I made an error here. I didn't do the correct thing. In the first situation where you got frustrated, reflecting on it, what do you think would be a better way to respond if you could, plot out the most codified way that would work out best for you to deal with that situation?
Not respond immediately, to write down exactly what my qualms are, and then to speak to him directly. Because literally when I talked to him, when he called me back in the afternoon, he specifically said, next time, call me. Don't do it on the call. There's other people on there. I understand. We're here to make money. You're frustrated. Don't do it there. And he was 100% right. And I know he was, and I also realized that because I didn't just embarrass him or the other people. I embarrassed him too, because essentially I was questioning his judgment. And even though I was right, it was the wrong way to go about doing it. So I should have wrote it down, took some notes and said, hey, I know that we were addressing this. These are my concerns about this. Can we look into seeing and make sure that what the information that I have is accurate, and to make sure that we're going about doing this the right way? And then you get the answer, and then everything will be taken care of in a better form, as opposed to me voicing my frustration on a conference call for 5 minutes that literally puts an arrow on my back and does nothing constructive. So I definitely would have taken some notes and gone offline about it and spoken to him directly and voiced my opinion about, or whatever my concern, to him directly, as opposed to the other two white people that were on the call. They really didn't, it concerned them, but he was in a position of authority, so it should have gone to him first. Absolutely.
Wow. Dig writing. I think we talked about that before. Getting things in writing can sometimes be a more constructive route to go in dealing with things on the job. But that is outstanding. Still learning, all of us still learning and still working on our code on the job. Thank you again for sharing. Did other folks who dialed in have commentary, suggestions based on what we've heard thus far?
May I say something about the last commentary?
This is Red in Ohio. Proceed.
Yes, just real quick. I found that interesting how the last caller, supervisor, he didn't say like to write it down. You all said to write it down, but I recall when I would actually do that, and in a meeting, they're giving out wrong information or incomplete information, and my concern would be for the newer non-white people who did not know. And I would write down the information, and then once I go to the supervisor later on, they're like, oh, well, we'll look into it, and never looked into it. So I just thought that was interesting. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
That's where I think Mr. Williams and some other folks have said when you do written documentation where everything is an electronic query, their failure to response can even still benefit you, because then you have a record that, hey, I sent out the response and they didn't even get back to me. I sent out you'll have the exact date, time, everything, and I sent it out to such and such and carbon copied this person, and nobody even got back to me, as though this wasn't important and it was a question about violation of company policy. Did other folks have comments, or I guess suggestions on what we've heard from previous callers?
I do have a question for the last caller regarding this conference call. was the nature of this conference call a meeting or something to go over regarding plans of some sort before a final project?
So basically, I don't want to say necessarily a meeting, but basically, you're going over like your current business. So you're going over like your current business pipeline and how to get, and if you have a project that's starting at A, where are you at in the project and what other things do we need to do to finish it and get it to B? And so we're basically talking about the progress of something. And what he was specifically talking to me about was how you have this structured, I don't believe is correct. But prior to me structuring it, I looked at the guidelines and I knew I was correct. Just because he didn't have previous experience with doing it the way that I did it, he automatically assumed, and it was pretty forthright with his assumption. And I do want to say that is that even though my tone was incorrect, he was like, "Oh no, you can't do this. I don't even know why you think you could do that." And that probably thing, now that I'm looking back, that had a lot to do with my tone as well. But I hope how I explained that kind of made sense. So we're talking about dates, we're talking about structures, how to get something done, and then making sure we're all on track to meet those dates. I hope that makes sense.
That does make sense. And the reason I asked is it sounds like, sort of maybe a huddle or what you're getting back at. And one thing that I have learned in terms of if you're doing something that can be associated with teamwork or being on a planning team is when somebody catches something, turning the solution back around on them and say, great, this is why we're working as a team. Somebody caught something. What do you suggest the solution is? Or something of that nature, because then you put it back on them to, come up with the solution. And then you also have that person on verbal record. If they give the improper solution, then you have some other witnesses. That's suggestion is regarding the hurricane thing. I remember there was another black man with me on another job, and he used to always say things. He used to whisper to me certain things about engaging certain people. He would just say, "Do not engage." And as part of my code, I just do not. Even if it's blatantly obvious, like everyone knows the hurricane in Puerto Rico. Hey, did you see the thing? No, I've just been busy trying to focus on this work. It's not their business.
Oh, that was your full commentary? Sounded like it ended abruptly.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that. Do not engage. Another one. Simple. You can that one you don't even have to say out loud. You can just say that to yourself. Other folks have commentary they want to share on what we've heard thus far.
Can I be heard?
We did hear you, but I think Stacy in the UK is with us. She had been silently listening. Stacy in the UK, if you want to proceed, and it is, I think we get our timestamp, 2:24 a.m. Friday morning.
Precisely. Hi, Dustin. Hi.
If you could speak up, your volume is kind of low. You could speak up.
Sorry. Hi to you and to everyone else on the call. I just wanted to add on to, I think it was one of the first couple of points that you were discussing around speaking about racism in the workplace, and also speaking to people about racism or anything else, actually. And I think you mentioned that even speaking to people outside of the office should be avoided, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. I had said I was one of those people that did speak to non-white people about racism, and having that come back to bite me. One of the things I just wanted to quickly mention is that and it's the point about workplace policies. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but in the UK, you can actually be, I guess, reprimanded or disciplined out. Okay, let me correct that. If, in terms of the organisation that I work for, our policy also acknowledges situations that happen outside of the workplace as part of the grievance process. So, for example, there was a work event taking place, and somebody had, sexually assaulted one of the female workers at a work event. That got reported the following day, and he was immediately sacked. And things that you say, and I've been in training on so-called the grievance procedure in the organisation that I work for, and it is actually part of the company policy that situations that happen outside of the workplace, particularly if it's a work event, can also be treated as part of the grievance process. So I just thought it's useful to make people aware of that, and I guess, as you say, always check company policy, because it does extend beyond your sort of physical building that you might be employed in. I've got other updates, but I'll come back a bit later, Gus.
Always awesome to have Stacy hanging in with us late, or I guess early, depending on your perspective. The male caller who spoke up simultaneously, thank you for your patience. Were you going to share, sir?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, but greeting Gus and the rest of the callers. I was wondering if anyone had any advice on utilizing doctors or medical notes, or any like paperwork to establish a case or serve as documentation in the event of potential termination or trumped up accusations by racists on the job.
I think Dr. Cambon talked about that, I believe, on a C.O.W.S broadcast, I think in 2012, if memory serves. But I know I can paraphrase what he talked about, it just saying, once you see problems are starting, if you can visit a mental health professional and just kind of document what's happening to you, how it's impacting you, if it's making you nervous, if it's making you stressed, if it's causing you to lose sleep. To start, same thing that I said before, start getting documentation, getting your paper trail so that you can have a mental health professional giving their expert opinion on how this has impacted your health over, weeks, months, whatever it is. And then you can show a record, as things worsen of how that's impacted you, and then put that with whatever documentation you have at work. But that was something he recommended. And I think Daryl Muhammad, he was a guest that we had on the program. We talked about workplace racism. I think he also dealt with having to see mental health professionals or health professionals as a result of his job and things that he went through, stress that he went there. And I think just getting documentation. If you're seeing someone who is recommended by your job, that can be more difficult because they might have your company's interest above yours. But if you can see a quality healthcare professional who is looking out for your best interest and get documentation, that can be super helpful. Other folks have suggestions on this, how you can use, or I guess start using, visiting a doctor or a healthcare professional to help with mitigating what's happening on the job if you think you might lose your job.
Hi, Gus.
Stacy in the UK.
I did mention a couple of weeks ago that I did go to my doctor because of things that happen in my organisation and things that I'm dealing with. So I did have a letter from my doctor, and that actually resulted in me being given time off work to deal with grievance that I'm actually finishing off writing as we speak. One thing that my union rep has suggested is that I also have what we call over here occupational health. I don't know if it's called the same thing in the US, but it is an organisation that allegedly acts independently of your doctor and the organisation. I mean, they are contracted by the organisation to do assessments of you, but it would be an apparent independent evaluation. So I guess it's where I've had a letter from my doctor. It's not that they're necessarily dismissing what's being said, but I guess it means that there's also an independent body also doing an assessment. And that's been suggested to me by my union because of the effects of what has been happening to me. So that's come up in the last, couple of days actually, that conversation. I have used occupational health in the past when I worked at another organisation, and I was the victim of a racist assault while I was in the car park of another organisation that I worked for, and these two racist white females did racially attack me, and I was eventually referred to occupational health, and they did sign me off for a period, and that didn't actually affect my employment. So whilst I'm still cautious about using occupational health, that's an example of where it did actually work to my benefit. So I'll just mute my line there.
Right on. Got time off from work. I think that's always beneficial. And if you can use it that way in the States as well, to at least get a few days off of work, that can be helpful in some instances. Do we have any other folks who have any experience with that, using doctor's visit to somehow aid if you feel under attack on your job? I'll take that as a no. If any of the folks that are listening, you certainly should not spectate. If we have folks who have any experience or suggestions with how you would incorporate a doctor into your counter-racist strategy. I know, as I said, Dr. Kamban, and if you visit his website, his name, kamalkamban.org. If you visit his website, his contact information is there. I'm sure if you reach out to him, I'm sure he'd be happy to walk over steps, recommendations, because I know he's talked about that explicitly. Yeah, other folks who had questions, commentary they wanted to add? Anybody we missed completely who has a hand up?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Gus. Greetings to the callers. I just want to share an experience. The work that I do, every once in a while we have to go to trade shows, and there was an event that I did not want to participate in, but I did because management wanted me to participate in. And to make a long story short, we were on a bus to get to the event, and I don't know if you work these trade shows, you know sometimes you're up very early in the morning and you get out very late. And at the end of the day, we were driving back from the event on the bus, and I fell asleep on the bus. I was one of the only non-white people on the bus, and when I woke up, it was maybe about an hour or so later. I was not at the hotel. Basically, the other white people on the bus, they saw me asleep on the bus and didn't say anything to the driver. The driver kept going, didn't look. We get to the bus station, and he's like, "Oh, wow, you're going to have to get a cab." A cab? Anyway, I did get a cab to get back to the hotel because I had to go back to work the next day, and I could not be there. it's just something that strikes me as the three T's. I could be mistaken. I just want to get your opinion or any of the callers' opinion on that, and I'll meet my line.
Absolutely. Total, I mean, as a racist, exactly what it means to be white. And just in those type of situations, generally, I don't see white people treat other whites in that sort of way. It would be, oh, wait a minute, is everybody here? Oh, wait a minute, go back and get Ted. Like, that's just the way that I see them function, even with other whites that they don't necessarily like. It doesn't mean that they won't mistreat them, but they would not just leave them on the bus to go, God knows wherever, and, good riddance. Hope you get back the best way you can. Just illustration of what it means to be white. In my view, whites never get the benefit of the doubt in any sort of situation like that. Anyone think it could be something else or have a different perspective?
This is Red again from Ohio. I definitely agree that was tacky, if nothing else, at least, because I feel like with white people, like we have been discussing with suspected racists, they don't necessarily want to be the direct cause of you possibly getting fired or reprimanded in any way. They basically want to let you do that on your own. So they could probably say, well, you know what, you fell asleep. It's not our job to wake you up. And then, of course, the bus driver also, well, hey, I don't have to wake you up. It's not my job. So I definitely think that was, if nothing else, a subtle act of racism. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Was the bus?
Go ahead, sir.
The male caller who spoke up, proceed.
Yes, I was going to ask, was the bus driver a non-white or white male?
It was he was not, I would not classify him as white, but it was not a non-white black male.
I have found in those situations that typically, specifically when I fall asleep around white people, they generally use that as an opportunity to make jests and to make jokes. It could be, I may be incorrect, but possibly what has happened in my case, they have actually taken pictures of me asleep and kept them to make jokes of later. If you care to do any questioning with any of your coworkers, there might be some malice, not just neglect, but some real malice involved. Thank you.
Well, in this case, I was not around any of the coworkers that I work with. We were at different hotels, and I did not mention it to any of them because they are all what I would classify as white. And at the end of the day, I got an Uber home, and I spoke to. This time, I did not go to sleep. It was about an hour away from the hotel, and I had a wonderful conversation with not a suspected racist, with a racist, driving me back. This time I did not fall asleep because I thought it could only get worse from that point on. So, and I'll meet my line.
Context of white supremacy. Yeah, that would definitely be any sort of job like that where you're doing a lot of driving with other race soldiers, that sort of thing. That might have to be one where you work out a code about resting, if you can, buddy up with another non-white person there or something like that. Because I could see it from all angles in terms of being molested while you are sleeping, and or them not alerting you when it's time to wake up or what have you. Like, you probably have to work out a pretty extensive code, because I would not feel very safe sleeping around whites. Other folks have commentary they wanted to make sure they got in, either what we've heard from listeners thus far or your own situation.
I was just going to add again to about the sleeping thing. Don't fall asleep around suspected racists. And I'd put that in the category of being sober around them. It might not be a substance, but being sober has to do with, trying to have your wherewithal at all times, and that includes, just being alert. I know, unfortunately, that comes in the form of some sort of extra resource that you may have to take on your part, whether it be a routine that you may have to work out earlier in the day just so you can be prepped. I do that on occasion. It costs you time, but they are working all around the clock against you. So I just wanted to add that, and I'll mute my line.
Indeed. Stacy in London, did you have commentary, ma'am?
Yeah, I don't have much of an update. As I mentioned, I'm just finishing off the last of grievance documents because I've got to get 2 in tomorrow. I know you were speaking earlier around trying not to use the word grievance or complaint. When I first lodged my, I made my group director aware of the physical assaults that I had experienced. And when I put something in writing to him, I deliberately did not use any of those words. However, in order to investigate the process, or rather what had happened, they have asked me to follow their grievance procedure. So, again, I'm in the UK, you're in the US, but at some point they will try and force you down that route regardless. Either way, it still requires them to do an investigation or investigations of what has taken place. But yeah, so I just thought I'd make that point. I have a question or comment as well, and it's been something that's been bugging me for a little while, and it follows on from, I think the young scholar in the Bay Area had written in a couple of weeks ago about one of his non-white female classmates that a suspected racist had gone over and started touching her hair. And it's something that's puzzled me or been wrangling me for a while, actually, in terms of not necessarily recognizing and accepting that how black hair, male or female, is we're made to feel uncomfortable about wearing natural hair, or even if you're not wearing your natural hair, hairstyles become a fascination, particularly for suspected racists. So I get that, and I get the how important it is to be able to feel and identify with who you are, and I guess being made not to feel that you can wear your natural hair or however you want to wear your hair because of the racism that we encounter. So I acknowledge all the issues that sit beneath this point. However, for me, and it's akin to the conversations around bias on unconscious bias, which really gets to me, because I just, there's a whole lot of conscious bias that happens. I'm less concerned about unconscious bias as I am about conscious bias. And it's this focus on conversations in the workplace around non-white people's hair and making space for black people to have, or white people to have conversations with black people about their hair and their experiences of, not being able to wear natural hair in the workplace. And whilst I do think it is an important part, an acknowledgement of the diversity conversation, I just think it's a way of being almost superficial. And I recently attended a conference, and it was on diversity, And they were having conversations at one of the tables I was at around, how one particular corporate company, they made it a point of talking and making space and learning from non-white people about their experiences of not being able to wear their natural hair in the workplace. And I was engaging this woman for a while, and she's a senior executive in one of the companies. And then I changed the subject to start getting down to some serious, or rather not serious, but conversations around how black people are not promoted in organisations and senior level recruitment for black and minority staff, and would her company like to get involved in initiatives around such issues. And she quickly ended the conversation and disappeared as fast as she could. And that for me really told me everything I needed to know about these conversations around hair. I just think it's very superficial, quite frankly, and we can get caught up in these conversations and believe that, these people are really caring, and they're not. And there are other people, non-white people around, really getting caught up in this debate. And I just wanted to get other people's perspective on these conversations. And it's complex because I do believe it is an important issue, particularly for non-white people to be able to feel that we can be ourselves. However, I'm not sure it's appropriate to be having these conversations with suspected racists, because it's a superficial way, like I guess Black History Month, of pretending to actually care about the trials and tribulations of black people. I'll mute my line, Gus.
Wow, that is fascinating. Your experience at this forum where they were having a discussion about, natural hair or black hair in the workplace, and then you raised other concerns, and that was the end of the exchange. I definitely think that one of the ways white supremacy is practiced is the war against natural black hair, males and females, as you stated, and that's something that should be discussed. However, in the vein that you talked about, if I understand it correctly from what you said, having some sort of seminar where we talk about how it feels to not be able to wear our hair in work, or to have white people present to hear that sort of discussion. No, I do not think that is constructive at all. That just sounds like voyeurism to me, and just another way for racists to consume black people, metaphorically. They don't need to hear all of that if they just want to change the policies for natural black hair. If they could do that, in the next 5 minutes, and we could save a whole lot of money and get that done quickly. I would tend to agree. I think that's one of the ways that whites it's a very different thing if we're talking about racism, white supremacy as terrorism, if we're going to shift that to just, we're going to spend the next day talking about how it feels to not be able to wear your hair on the job. That's a very different conversation than terrorism against black people and how it's manifested economically and in labor with regards to black employment. That's a very different conversation. Did other folks have a response to Stacy's question?
I do have a question for her. Did the specific question come up regarding hair, just about the courtesy of keeping your hands to yourself, which seems to be something that most people learn when they're a child?
Well, it's interesting because she was relaying conversations that had taken place in her workplace, and she was coming at it from a perspective of she just didn't know, and sort of touching people's hair was just something that she did, and anyway, and not realizing that it was offensive. So it's that kind of faux ignorance. But no, she didn't mention that she hadn't learned to keep her hands to herself. And it's it's not just in the workplace. I remember when my daughter was young and being in the doctor's surgery waiting to go in, and there were these two older white women sitting behind, and they tapped me on the shoulder and asked if they could touch my daughter's hair, and I said absolutely not. And so it's just the habits that they have. But this, I think it's become almost fashionable in companies who claim to be really focused on diversity and ensuring that their workplaces are inclusive, but it's very superficial, and I think it's just I guess listening to the cows, I'm not so confused about the games that get played, but it's my observation that non-white people can get caught up in this nonsense, and it's a complete and utter distraction from actually dealing with the serious issues around what non-white people face in the workplace. But no, she didn't mention not learning to keep her hands to herself as a child. I'll mute my line.
That is very disturbing to it's borderline. It sounds like something that's very pedophilic. Oh, can I examine your child? That is quite disturbing and disgusting in my view.
We have
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to quickly say, just thinking about the same thing, and me being a black female, of course I've had white women ask me if they could touch my hair or just touch my hair, but I was just now thinking about it, and it's like I don't see them do that to, especially these quote unquote liberal or these people who want to be more diverse or what have you. I don't see these white women, white feminists touching each other's hair. So it kind of goes back to these type of women, they like to constantly speak about, they're victims of so many different types of sexualized assault. And I definitely agree that it would kind of seem like that would kind of be like a physical assault. So I'm just thinking about that now. It definitely seems interesting. Thank you.
Yeah,
I do. Sorry.
Proceed.
Oh yeah, I was going to say I do think there is a little bit of consumption there. Going back to Delectable Negro, again, when my daughter was at school, and it was something they actually did when I was at school as well. They'd, under the guise of celebrating diversity, I guess, invite parents to, and it was particularly aimed at non-white children, to do your child's hair in a particular way, and they would take photographs and then put them up and display them. And I think when we were children, my mum did allow us to participate in this nonsense. But as I got older and I had my child, I certainly wasn't codified. I didn't really have any knowledge of Neely Fuller or anyone else. But I guess in my own way realised that this was just an act of racism, and so my daughter absolutely did not participate in any of that nonsense, and nobody was going to take any photographs of her hair. And having listened to the book discussions on Delectable Negro, there is something, yes, probably paedophilic, but definitely about consuming black bodies, and then it continues into adulthood and into the workplace and anywhere else where people think they can just come along and touch, and but also give you permission to enjoy your hair as well. We'll make space for you to enjoy your hair, and think that it's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have. I'll mute my line.
Context of White Supremacy, Thursday's Workplace Racism. Do we have other folks who were going to respond to Stacy's question about diversity conversations in the workplace being, watered down to just focus in a kind of superficial way on black hair, or folks that we haven't heard from who wanted to share their own workplace experience? Lines should be open. Proceed.
May I proceed about experience on hair?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment as far as black males too, having to deal with that when I was younger. In the yearbook, the previous caller, I believe, caller from London, was saying about how the hair and the school and how they wanted to take pictures. I remember that I was photographed for my yearbook. 2002, I believe, I was photographed for having a large afro. I guess afros were not in style, and I lived in a place where there was terribly too many white people, and they were completely fascinated by my afro to the point where they had a contest to see how many pencils they could stick in my hair. Very confused and just, abused basically by those people's end. But I remember it started at school, and with the fascination of touching my hair, and I think it's a problem. Again, it's one of those consumption issues where they want access to black bodies, and I think even the black males are not exempt from that. Of course, yeah, we don't need to go over that, but I just wanted to share my experience on that. I noticed that was a problem as well. Thanks.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, retired firefighter.
Greetings, everyone. Yeah, I almost forgot some of the things that I was going to bring up, but I just start off by saying I completely forgot about Mr. Beach, and I'm kind of like disappointed in myself. It's kind of late in getting the thought of him being on the program, but I listened to the archives, and it was a pretty good informative program. Like Mr. Beach, I also was brought into, in my situation, brought into an office about a book that I was reading on Malcolm X. The fire department actually encourages, and I'm not making an excuse for me, but they actually encourage reading materials. They have all sorts of books at the station, magazines, including pornographic items, the Bible. Matter of fact, the pornographic information may be right next to the Bible at a fire station. Television, just like what people would have in their home, you would have in a fire station. And actually, what the story behind the book incident that I had was based on a white male who was angry, looking for revenge, to try to cause some sort of issue with me on the job as far as getting fired or something like that. And he actually, because I put the book down, not in a secure place, but yet it wasn't in an obvious place either. It just shows you, just like what I've heard, that yes, white people, and I can confirm to anyone who does not know, they do pay attention. They do pay attention to their niggers, that's for sure. Especially if they are reading and studying something on racism. They're definitely going to pay attention to you. And that's what he was doing, because I actually almost like hid the book. But he was following me so closely with his eyes and his behavior that he noticed that I put it way up on top of a napkin Benson that was in one of the bathrooms. And when I came back from a call, I'm looking for my book. Where my book is? Where's my book? And next thing I know, they're calling me into at the time was the chief's office, and he has my book in his hand, and he's fingering through the book, and he's asking me, this could be a problem here by you having this book. And I said, I don't see it's a problem. Why is it a problem? Well, what if someone brings a book about the Ku Klux Klan here? I say that'd be fine with me because I would like to read it. That's what I told the chief. So he actually couldn't do anything about it as far as some sort of violation or anything like that. So he gave me the book back, and it basically wasn't, anything out of it. Although I wouldn't suggest that you bring information like that to work in it, or if you do, be very concealing about the information about your reading and whatnot. And what I could have done, I could have just stayed in my bunk area, and from there, had he went in there and got the book, then there would have been some serious problem on his part. Had he went inside my private space, as far as that's concerned. I think I heard someone mentioning about falling asleep around white people. I'm pretty sure that the person who said it understood it as a mistake, so I'm not going to kind of like rub that situation in. That is a serious no-no as far as that's concerned. I'm surprised they didn't take pictures of you, like I heard someone said. Put something in your mouth. It's all kinds of. It's amazing how imaginative, in a evil way, in a destructive way, white people are. There's a lot of different things that could have taken place during that time, other than just you waking up somewhere far away from your ended location. Could have been a lot worse. Trust me on that. As far as for my 28 and a half years around white people in a fire station. And I'll let it rest for right now on the things, and I'll just listen. Since I'm now tuned in, I can participate in the conversation. Thank you.
Indeed. Do we have other folks who have a hand up that we have not heard from at all, who had commentary they wanted to share?
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Gus, all the listeners and callers. It's been a while since I called in. I wrote in a while ago in reference to a appendage that I had on that had my brother's ashes in it, and I said that I'll give the backstory on that. So what basically happened was a day prior, before the union rep made references to the pendant that I had on, I was driving something similar to a forklift, and I mentioned before that people were making like code noises. This time it happened again, and I kind of couldn't control my emotions, so I jumped off my lift. When I jumped off my lift, I was walking toward the four guys that was doing it, and then I kind of thought, is this what you really want to do? So I stopped in my tracks, turned around, I got back on my lift, and I drove around until I could calm down. I saw one of the guys by himself, and I drove up on him, and I asked him, I said, hey, did you want to speak to me? And he looked weird, like he looked confused, put it that way. He looked confused, like he didn't know what I was talking about. And this was one of the guys that was making the crow noises. So when he was like, oh, what do you mean? I was like, oh, I thought you were trying to get my attention. He was like, when? I was like, oh, 15 minutes ago. He was like, oh, I didn't. So now he knows what I'm talking about. He's like, I didn't say anything. And I was like, oh, okay. And I drove off. 5 minutes after that, I went to go talk to a non-white, extremely confused black guy, and I told him about the incident. And I was like, I asked him what was the guy's name. He told me what was the guy's name, and I told him what happened. Then he was like, well, I don't think you want to do that. He's a union rep. So I was like, I don't care who he is. He did something that I deemed was incorrect. And I asked him about it in a real polite way, but he knew exactly what I was talking about. He said he didn't know, so I left it alone. Then the guy, the union rep that I approached and asked him, did he want to talk to me after making the crow noises? He seen me later on when we clocked out at 11 p.m. and he was like, "Oh, what was that up? What was all that about?" I was like, "What was what about?" He was like, "When you asked me, did I want to talk to you?" I was like, "Oh, nothing. I thought you was trying to get my attention, but maybe you weren't." And he was like, "Well, why did you think that?" I was like, "Oh, when I drove by, I assumed that you was trying to call me, but I wasn't 100% sure. I thought I heard something." And he was like, "Oh, well, I'm always making all types of noises." So he let me know right then and there that he was making a noise. He was like, "Yeah, sometimes I get crazy like that." And he left it at that. And then today I had a different incident where a non-white black guy said that a white guy came to him and said to him, "Hey, what's up with this guy talking about me?" Said he heard that I don't like white people. So I laughed at it. And then another non-white Hispanic girl told me later on in the day that she had heard the same thing. But I don't know if it was from the same person. I didn't ask her. But I feel like as long as white people feel that way, then I'm, in a sense, I'm kind of good, because then they won't approach me with any more nonsense, making racial jokes, or coming around me thinking that they can do anything. But then again, I'm thinking, well, they already know that I'm allergic to it, so I have to move a little bit more cautiously. And that was all I pretty much had to share.
Wow. Thank you for the update. Excuse me. I said that earlier. I appreciate it when folks can, let us know how things are evolving in terms of what they're dealing with. One thing that I think, or at least on the job, I think I've said consistently, to take accusations seriously. And I would certainly, anytime that folks are saying you don't like white people, I would take that seriously, because if you haven't said it, that is a false charge. And, I would want to make sure that that is not something that's just funny or anything to snicker about, because they're practicing racism against you, making crow noises or whatever other tacky things excuse me, that they're doing, but the way they spin it consistently, that they're the victims, that you are the racist, that you don't like white people. And that's not what this is at all. You're just inquiring. You didn't even, say anything, just inquiring. Were you, trying to talk to me, asking a question? How did it get to, I don't like white people? To me, that's just unacceptable. And I would encourage victims, because I've heard that pattern before, where somehow a black person who has not made any sort of statements, they haven't said anything, they haven't mistreated anybody, but somehow they end up being accused of not liking white people somehow on the job, and that accusation can be real serious and can end up causing you problems on the causing you problems on the workplace. So I would take that real serious and stop that, because unless you left out a part of the story, you never told anybody there that you didn't like white people. That's a false charge.
The thing is, I guess it's like my mannerism. Since I've been mistreated so many times, I try not to communicate with white people, and I only communicate with non-white people. And even then, I try to keep that to a minimum. But I guess they notice, like, well, if he do talk to us, it's really brief, and then he might be laughing with this guy walking out of the door when they're clocking out. And also, like, how do you think I should go about approaching that? Because the people that are telling me this is not the white people themselves, it's non-white people, and I kind of don't want to get them involved.
Oh, totally understand that. Even still, just with that charge, you haven't said anything, and that's real important, because racists, they are phenomenal. That's the whole system of white supremacy. False charges against black people with no evidence, and things get started out of nothing. Things like this can become a big deal. You never said you did not like white people. Anyone who is saying that you don't like white people is making an assumption, which they generally say is a no-no. They're making an assumption, they're jumping to conclusions, and they're spreading rumors, even if it's a non-white person. You don't have to involve them. But I would just make it like, I think you said you laughed or what have you. I wouldn't laugh. I would just say, hey, I have never said that I don't like white people. That is not true. That is a false charge. And that's something to take seriously. That's a serious charge. We shouldn't just throw that around. I have never said that I don't like white people, and that's not true. And if anyone here, if you've heard me say that, let me know, because that'd be something that I'd have to stand corrected if somebody's on record of me saying that. But I've never said that. That's a false charge. And every time someone came up to me and said that, however I want to say it, I try and be as succinct about it as possible. That way they don't, have to go testify. But I would continue to say that. And, if I continued to hear it, I might even contemplate if I wanted to bring it up, at a meeting or what have you, if I was continuing to hear it. But I would just, that sort of thing I would take seriously. If you have not said it, that is a false charge. In the same way, you could look at it the other way. They would allow you to go around there and say, oh, such and such doesn't like black people. You would be in somebody's office in about 5 minutes if you started going around there saying that person never said they didn't like people, regardless of what kind of noises that they make or jokes they tell. You can't run around here and say such and such doesn't like black people. So no, it's not acceptable for people to run around here and say that I or anyone doesn't like white people if they never said that.
I guess.
Yeah, that is, go ahead.
Yeah, I've given the situations that I've been dealing with for the part of a year, started off with a false accusation. I would concur with everything that has been said. Whether or not you choose to directly address it, I would definitely take it seriously. And even where you are hearing things from non-white people, I would treat those conversations as if you were talking to a suspected racist, because I guess you can listen to the archives, but I had somebody who is a non-white female send me an email about, and she's somebody who knows that I'm going through problems in the workplace, and she has also had her own racist attacks as well. But she sent me a link to an article which is about the role of white women and how they should be helping to address racism in the workplace. And this was again in the context of diversity initiatives and trying to get those established in the organisation that we both work. At no point have I ever told this woman my views around white women, suspected racist or not. She sent me that email from her home email account, and I knew at the time she was working on behalf of a suspected racist, just from other things that she was doing. So, as I said, you can listen to the archive because I went into a bit more detail on this about a month or so ago. But again, I would just tread lightly with your non-white colleagues. It's not necessarily the case that they will be trying to set you up, but they are also, it is also possible that they are being used by suspected racists, and maybe just apply some codification. I think it was Emmy some time ago talked about compensatory acts, so maybe having allocating time to talk to some whites, obviously being very codified in your conversations, but not necessarily being seen to just be focusing on engagement with non-white staff and avoiding white staff in the organisation, whether you've had a hostile experience from an individual or not. But I'll mute my line there, Gus.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I concur with the female caller from the UK concerning non-white people. And I think the male caller said that he inquired what that suspected racist's name was, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, you said with a person who is confused about racism. Was that correct, sir?
Well, the person that was confused about racism wasn't the one who told me that someone said that they thought that I didn't like white people. This person that told me that is he is a little bit less confused, and what he told the guy was, oh no, he's young and he's quiet. He's a real cool guy. You just gotta get to know him. So he told him that so that way he wouldn't try to do any investigation. But he pretty much did tell me, like, you know, this guy was trying to inquire. But however, the other guy that I had the incident with the union rep, I think that they did have a conversation because he told me that the union rep called him on Saturday and they had a conversation about me. And that I didn't like, and I kind of get away from the non-white person a little bit. But I didn't cause conflict with him because I understand we're in the system.
Correct. Maybe some part of codification, modified, added. If you know that someone is confused or even less confused. I agree with the female caller. You can treat them like suspected racist, but it just in listening to your story, it sounded like a lot of he said, she said, he said, and that's a lot of confusion. And you know, I have a mentality that, you know, minimize contact, minimize conflict, minimize unnecessary communication, and you minimize confusion. So there may be, you know, just work-related conversation only. And maybe even get the reputation for being, you know, that guy's quiet. He's always quiet. You know, he only talks about work stuff. You know, and maybe just some codification, modification.
Emmy was mentioned. She sent a message from her class this week, which would still count for workplace racism, that they sent out one of the frames for the class presentation for the day featured O.J. Simpson, of course. Do we have other folks who had a hand up that we've not heard from at all? Folks who have a hand up that we've not heard from at all? Did we miss anybody?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how's it going? This is Keita. Just wanted to talk about experience at work. I'm dealing with a suspected racist. And we recently got a new employee. This is white male, recently out of college. And I've noticed that my lead has taken a liking to him, to the point where they seem to like have hit it off. And he's probably been here for about 2 months. And I've been on a team for about 6 or 7 months so far. And just their rapport was kind of interesting. They're going on lunch, you know, they're going to lunch together, and, you know, and they're not even on the same, like, we're all in the same department, but he's on a team that's in our department but isn't related to ours, even though we're in like a very tight organization. So I just find it interesting that he's going like out of his way to like be really nice to him. And he even like he's giving him like DVDs for like extra information on how to do his job better. And I just found that interesting because he definitely did not give me that type of information when I started. And, you know, just from my experience, just being in the workplace, suspected racists, race soldiers, white people in general, they love to keep information away from black people, especially if it involves you potentially having more knowledge than them. That has just been my experience, and yeah, Thank you.
Indeed. I want to see if I can sprinkle in a few of the comments that people wrote in since we've been on the air, or excuse me, wrote in even before we began broadcasting. This was written in from a black female. Okay. She's studying to be a nurse. She wanted to share this incident. I have clinicals in a city hospital. I can actually make this a little bigger. Yes. I have clinicals in a city hospital. We usually follow a nurse around for their shift. The nurse, white male, was showing me how to discharge a patient, black male. So the nurse and I assist him gathering his things. We help him get in a wheelchair and head downstairs to assist the patient with getting a cab. A few moments of waiting outside, the cab arrives. The nurse, white male, is assisting the patient out of the chair and into the cab. The patient's pants fall and the top half of his butt is exposed. The nurse grabs the top of his pants to stop them from falling, then smacks the patient's behind. I know you say we shouldn't be surprised by things like this, but I was shocked. The black male was in his 70s and about 6'3". Delectable Negro, I might add that in again. Sexual abuse, I think, actually, yeah, more than I'm even thinking about it, because that is, I think the full title is the Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture. The homoerotic aspect of it, certainly, if I got that correct, white male nurse, black male patient, absolutely. And that's what I mean about just observations. Even if you directly are not being molested and mauled on your jobs, just being alert, you can still learn a lot about racism, white supremacy, and you'll learn a lot about what it means to be white and how they, are still practicing racism in your midst, even if they are not directly targeting you today. Other folks have comments they need to share. Did we miss anybody? Anyone with a hand up that we missed?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus, and to the callers and listeners. This is the caller from Detroit. I just wanted to give an update. It's been a minute since I've been able to participate. So just an update on what's been happening at the law firm that I've been contracting at. It's been about 2 years since I've been there, and I had been assigned to a non-white, non-black. He's a Chaldean, classified as a Chaldean attorney, and I had been working with him since I've been there for the almost 2 years. And I noticed, when I would go on vacation, not if I call in for a day or two, but if I go on a vacation for more than, let's say, 3 or 4 days, then the firm would assign another secretary to do backup work for me, so nothing would get behind. And so last year, I noticed when I went on vacation for an extended period of time, when I returned, the attorney, he would, nitpick and kind of compare my work to the, it would be a white female that did backup for me. And so I kind of just made notation of how he was just, just picking small things that, oh, you should do this. This is what, the other secretary or assistant would do. I think we should adapt her ways. I think this would be more efficient. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, So I just, made whatever adjustments so I can, just continue with my work. So this year, when I went on vacation and came back, same situation kind of happened, but there was a mix-up on the calendar where a meeting was scheduled and the times were kind of off, and I had just returned back from vacation, so it was actually the fault of the person who was sitting in for me while I was gone, but somehow or another they made it, ultimately my responsibility because I was a little backed up when I came. So the attorney requested that he be reassigned a new assistant. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That's perfect because I was still able to work there. And so the office manager she would all, she brought up my review. She said, oh yeah, when you got your last review, you got, just raving reviews from him. I don't understand why he's having an issue with this one mistake. And do you have a problem with being reassigned? And I said, oh, absolutely not. If he feels, like it's an issue with me making one mistake and he wants another assistant secretary, no problem. So she said that I'll just be kind of doing backup work for everyone else until they hire new attorneys. And this is where everything kind of shifted from the other secretaries in the office. So it's a very busy firm. And so when I was doing the work for that attorney, I was always busy. I would, come in, have my earplugs in and just kind of go in the zone and just not participate in any of the office politics or anything. I would just do my work and in and out. And so now that I am not assigned to anyone in particular and I do kind of backup work, so to speak, it appears as if I don't have anything to do because it's just slow. It's a slower pace for me. I'm not assigned to anyone. And so, oh my goodness, the white female secretaries, they are really becoming, they are so bothered, I guess, by the fact that I have nothing to do in their eyes. I am very good at stretching a small project to make myself look busy because I know how lazy they are, and they'll try to dump a lot of the things that they really don't want to do on me. So I will take a project and I will take as long as I need to get it done, get me through the day. And so there's this one lady that she, I think I mentioned before, she was one of the female assistants that brought in a Donald Trump calendar, and she's very just over the top with her personality. So I noticed that they had sat her next to me when we moved into our new office. And she was very annoying, but I just learned how to tune her out. And she was working on trying to just, get in my personal space and just be nosy, just all the, because I'm just the quiet person in the office. And so it had gotten to the point where she was bothering everyone else in the area, and they moved her seat. And so now that I am not assigned to anyone, she comes over every morning for the past month and a half since I haven't been reassigned. And she's asking, can you please ask the office manager if they can move your seat over by me? I miss sitting next to you. And, I'll go into the office with you and ask, please, please, please. And I said, no, I'm not interested in getting my seat moved. There's someone sitting in the seat that you want me to sit in. And furthermore, I'm just not interested. I'm fine where I am. And so then the next day I'll come, can you please, please, please ask if you can get your seat moved? I just miss sitting next to you. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. So when I realized that she was doing this every day, I went to the office manager and I said, what is the policy on your, moving the seats? I've been thumbing through the manual, and I don't see anything as it relates to, how you assign seats, because I did notice she was moving people because she moved the white female. And so I said, because there's been a rumor that, people are trying to get my seat moved, and I just want to, talk to you before anything is done. What is your policy on that? Well, we don't have a policy. I just try to move people around based on personality. And when I see that there's like issues in certain areas, I try to put more positive people around, just try to balance out the office. I said, well, let it be known I'm not interested in my seat being moved. I'm not interested in moving next to the other lady that I was sitting next to before she got moved. I am not interested in any of that. So just make sure you put that down, that I do not want my seat moved. She said, well, we're going to have a meeting on Friday, which is tomorrow. We're going to talk about, your workload, because, I want to see if I can get you to help other people out. And, but I make notation that, I'm not going to move your seat. And I said, okay, very, fine. And, another thing too is, like, before I, mute my line, I just noticed again, they're all coming up to me daily wondering, well, who are you working for? What kind of work do they have you doing? What are you doing? It just bothers them that I'm kind of not as busy And it's just interesting how they're now just meddling and just, trying to get into my space and doing what white people do. And lastly, I just wanted to also mention, too, one of the female callers was talking about Black women and hair. And I know I mentioned before that I was struggling with wearing my natural hair. And so it just so happened my hairstylist, she was unavailable. And I went to work with my beautiful natural hair, and people in the office that I hadn't spoken to, that they didn't spoke to me, I mean, white people. These are people who will walk past me in the office and wouldn't say anything. Good morning, compliment my hair, just making it seem like I was a new person, as if they didn't know who I was. It wasn't like it was a drastic difference, but it was a difference naturally. But I just thought it was interesting because that one day that I wore my natural hair, I got the most attention that I had ever received in the almost 2 years that I've been there. So that's all I want to share, and I'll mute my line. Thanks for letting me share.
The white gaze, indeed. Wow. And that, when the angst of the white women about your perceived light workload, that is tantamount to affirmative action. Like, man, she is just, hanging out here getting paid for doing nothing. This is a total travesty. That's why we got Trump in the White House now, to get rid of this sort of waste. But that is standard operating procedure. Black people are not supposed to be looking like they are doing well, having no problems on the job, and much less not even having to work too hard. Like, oh man, like that is the worst thing ever. We have other folks listening in have commentary. Anybody that we missed completely, who had a hand up that we missed completely?
Well, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. This is Ken Steele, and I am currently in Chino, California. I just wanted to say to one of the previous callers, they were talking about in the office they're running into problems about the rumor that they suppose that you do not like white people. I think that you need to make a concerted effort to correct that rumor, and you need to make it uncomfortable for anybody to bring up any sort of accusation like that, if possible. And I personally do that by just acting very indignant to the claim. Just kind of emulate some of the behavior that you've seen from suspected white supremacists when they deny that they are racist. You can even throw in, my best friend is a white person. So you can say all sorts of lines like that to kind of, I guess, use as evidence that you, in fact, do not have hateful feelings towards white people. Regarding the hair touching, if you feel comfortable doing this, I would suggest documenting every single time that happens, and then if it doesn't stop, then I think that is one of the times that you can definitely go to, depending on who's doing the touching, you can go to human resources and have something be done about it internally. Just have it marked or noted, because that's a violation of your personal space. And pretty much all workplaces have rules about people respecting the personal space of others. So that's something that I would definitely seek to pursue. And then there was the caller that was asking about documentation of medical problems, and if that is something that can be used in pursuing legal action. And the answer is yes. If you can retain all of the medical records associated with your well-being, and you can display that, hey, this job definitely did impact your health negatively. You could definitely use that information. And, you know, if you do have a employment attorney at this time, bring it to their attention that you do have this information, and it can definitely help establish value in any sort of demand offering that you may be sending to them, so, or demand letters that you may be sending to them. So, you know, I guess that is what I have to contribute for now. Thanks for letting me participate, and I will mute my line at this time. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Appreciate that, Mr. Steele. Did we miss anyone? Anyone have a hand up that we missed completely? Awesome.
Yes, can I be heard?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sir. Caller in Florida. Proceed.
Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I was thinking about, I think O.J. Simpson was mentioned a couple of times. There was like two separate occasions. I think one was maybe earlier this year, and then I think another one was maybe about 2 years ago. I was asked, I guess, like a similar question about, basically it comes down to, do you think he did it? It was something of that nature. And if I can recall, the first person was a non-white person. He asked me, he said, so, hey man, he said, hey man, do you think he did it? And then I said, it was a real quick response. I said I was too young at the time. So it was something like that. I was too young at the time, so I had to look into it. And then his response was like 2 words, good answer. That's all he said. So that, you know, that ended that conversation. And then there was a white woman who had just started. And she was saying, like, isn't that the O.J. Simpson guy or whatever? And I was saying, yeah. I said, looks like that's who it is. So it sounded like she tried to make it seem like she was uninformed by the tone she was using. But I think she did know more about it than she was letting off. So she basically ended up asking me the same thing. And I said something similar. I said I wasn't really paying attention to it very much, but I just knew it was a very popular case, you know. And I just said, why do you think they keep talking about it? So, and then so I asked her the question. So she just basically got off of the one she asked me, and she said, yeah, you know, I'm getting tired of hearing it too. So that, you know, that neutralized that one, like that conversation. Other than that, there was at least 3 other observations I had. Like there's a highly melanated female, black female. She is the I guess you can call it the head of the department in the records area. So she, I think, lost her mother. Yeah, she lost her mother a couple of months ago. And the other associates or co-workers were having a discussion about her not wanting to take photographs. You know, they were saying, yeah, she doesn't like to take pictures or whatever. And, you know, even when it's down to us, like, getting our new badges, because when a new clerk came in, we had to all take, you know, new pictures and whatnot to start out the new clerk's term. And she was pretty much opposed to getting a new picture taken. So, you know, I guess they were trying to figure out why or whatever. But in my mind, I'm thinking that, you know, she probably was, you know, I think degraded or whatever, you know, maybe coming up or whatever, you know, how the darker you are, you pretty much are made fun of and pretty much ridiculed for having melanin. And I just thought in my mind, you know, I could, you know, I guess relate to her in that kind of regard. And, you know, she's pretty much emphatic about not taking pictures and stuff. And I wanted to mention that one because I noticed in this newsletter,
I think with my image, because I got a compliment from one of the judicial assistants upstairs, a non-white female, and I think they made my picture darker, like, and they made the white people on the picture. I think it was maybe one other black female. Their pictures were lighter. I have to go back and look at it again because I think they did that with O.J. Simpson one time to mention that name. Not to get into any metaphors, but the picture I noticed was darker or whatnot, and I noticed that. But on the next incident was the judge. I was speaking to a white female judge upstairs as I was picking up some documents, and she made an interesting comment about the I guess the proceedings she has to do for the juvenile delinquents, I guess. And it's a lot of black children that I think are on the case docket. So she was saying, she said, I have a hard time pronouncing some of these names. So I guess I think she was doing it to test to see what my response would be. Because what she did was, she said my name in a simplistic way, because I guess it's a name that my first name is a name that many white people would have. And then she compared it to the names of the black teenagers that were in the courtroom. Like, see, this name is easy right here, saying my name, but saying these other names, she said a metaphor. It felt like I had a mini stroke in my mouth, whatever that means. So, like, I guess she was referring to, something like a heart attack or whatever, or a stroke. But it did seem like, kind of weird that, the way she said it. And, like her and her judicial assistant, started chuckling over it or whatever. So, I just kind of just did like a little, observant nod, like, interesting, very interesting. And I pretty much walked out of there. And the last one is the term I've been using is the warden, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who had complimented me on my T-shirt. She has been sitting at the counter where the customer service lady up there who help people file their paperwork. And, I'm like, man, what is she, she keeps sitting up there. And then it's not like frequent weeks. It's like 1 week she'll sit up there at the counter and, she'll see if I'm coming up there. And it seems like she's sitting up there the times that I come up there. Or maybe it's just through half of the day. And then she'll leave on certain other days. So, I'm starting to document that too. And, sometimes she'll just speak to me in front of everybody. So, I just speak back and, I just keep going or whatever. So she hadn't really mentioned anything about that or the experiment, because I really do think she was doing that to see if people will be baited to come ask questions about the experiment. So she may have been trying to focus on what clothes that I'm wearing to do another experiment. But that's all I have right now for my update, and thank you.
Wild. Those metaphors, in my view, they reveal a lot. Just paying attention to what people compare and contrast. A stroke in her mouth, pronouncing these names, probably the names of black people, non-white people. Yes. I think also took notes. There were so many tidbits. I guess the first situation with the O.J. Simpson, I thought that, or I guess the reference to O.J. Simpson and them darkening his picture, I thought that was really important in terms of empathizing with your black female coworker.
the one you said she was more melanated, crystal black, if you will, Dr. Welsing, and she didn't want to take the pictures. And I think there are probably a lot of black people, unfortunately, generations of black people even, who that is a part of the way that we've been victimized. But I think that is always grand. We have enough black self-respect to empathize with other victims of racism and how we have all been, abused and terrorized in this system. Um, I think as well the woman that is the warden, as you say, that inquiring about the clothes, just being cautious and using those sort of labels. If you can use little mnemonics and things like that, where you're not calling her the warden out, to her face or what have you, but in your mind, every time warden is on the block, just so that you are constantly alert of how you should be viewing this person, thinking about this person, and not, being relaxed in your code. And oh yeah, Judy is cool, and this is my no, that is the warden, and I'm going to function like that is the warden every time that she is around, and even I think that's constructive. Just paying attention, because that's what they do to us, right? Paying attention. When did you get here? Were you 30 seconds late? What did you have for dinner? What did you have for lunch? What do you do? Like, they're keeping notes, on meticulous notes on us. So we should be doing the same thing, making observations about their patterns, their comings and goings, especially if it seems like some of their patterns might be overlapping with us, as though they might be doing things to keep, tabs or an eye on us for whatever reason. I definitely think that's something we should be aware of, and just, again, paying attention to patterns. Do we have any folks additional observations on what we've heard thus far? Got last few minutes of the broadcast. Any commentary folks wanted to get in?
Yes, may I make a brief comment?
For sure.
Yes, it's not directly related to workplace. I did listen to a call a couple of weeks ago that helped me, kind of in the workplace, and the midwife that we hired to birth our child. The interview with Dr. Ani was very helpful. All of the callers and the host regarding the test, pricking the heel of the baby and taking the blood. That day that I listened to the rebroadcast, the archive, was the day after I received the form, which I was asked whether I wanted to take that test or have my son tested. And due to that question that was asked by a listener and that program that I listened to, I believe I listened to it on a Friday, I was able to go home and do some more reading, and made the decision not to have the test done on my son. So I want to thank the callers and the host and Dr. Ani for that broadcast last week. Thanks.
Spectacular. Black attempted parenting. That is awesome. We have other folks who had commentary they want to make sure they got in. While folks are, while folks are thinking, another person wrote in, black male. A couple of weeks ago, I was loading a truck and I was finishing up. The hook was just hanging overhead outside of anyone's reach. A racist suspect then began to jump to try to grab the hook. He then said to me, "I guess white men can't jump." I then said to him, "Are you white?" He then began to stutter a bit and finally answered my question with, "I'm Portuguese, but I identify as American." About a week after that incident, the same racist suspect came up to me and said, "Hey, bro, I got a question for you." I answered, "What's your question?" His reply, "Can you smile?" I said, "Do I need to smile to do my job?" He said, "No, but you always look angry. I understand by listening to your broadcast and Mr. Fuller's work and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's work that black people should be more serious while at work and stop trying to be the entertainment committee. The problem that I'm having now is that the other white people will begin to label me as the angry black man. Any help with that will be great." I think we've talked about this before. I don't know if I think this might be one of the fewer times that angry black man has popped up. I think a lot of times we've heard quiet, not a team player, that sort of thing. We don't hear from you. Haven't heard angry as much, but I think we talked, or at least I've given out suggestions. I think someone even said today, we have a hard time speaking, sometimes even saying hi. I totally understand. You can make that a part of your code. I've talked about that before, where you can speak morning, Ted, morning, whatever it is. If you all are on lunch at the same time or whatever it is, where you have specific subject matter, that you bring up most of it in the question lane where you can ask them a question. And I've said before, I think our counter-racist code is not to be aloof. You certainly want to be suspicious of the warden. That doesn't mean that, when she comes down the hallway, you're in a crouching position and, ready to put your hand on a concealed weapon. It just means, hey, I'm ready to ask a question if need be, and I'm alert to your presence. I don't need to, scowl at you or anything else. I think Mr. Fuller has said often, being codified should help you be a bit more at ease. It sounds like this, the person that's writing in, if you're calm enough to be able to ask questions and not be aroused or angry, even when they're coming back and asking you quite particularly ask, are you white? Great question. Great question. I would say just continue doing what you're doing, and if you want to, speak morning, Ted, morning, to be a bit more affable when you speak, but still being serious and caring about your business, that's fine. But to me, it doesn't sound like there's a problem. I think as long as you're in the system of racism, white supremacy, things are not going to be perfect. I would much rather be on a job where the only problem is white people are saying, man, you are really serious. If that's my only problem, I feel like I can live with that. That's reasonable for the system of racism, white supremacy. The rest of his commentary. Most recent update is while leaving work, two racist suspects, one older and the other younger, and myself, were waiting to leave. Part of my code, which I shared before, is while on break, I have my phone's alarm set, so when it rings, I get up to answer it. So I only spend 15 minutes with the suspected racist, so they won't label me standoffish. Brilliant, brilliant, right on cue. This time, we were at the end of the day, so no alarm to save me from their tacky conversation. While we were leaving, the older white man said to me, you know that black woman that was a judge on American Idol? So I answered, I have no idea who you're talking about. And then he whipped out his phone and showed me a picture of Nicki Minaj in a skimpy dress. He then shows the image to the younger white man, and his response was, she's such a slut. I notice when they talk about other white women that they have did similar things or worse, they don't seem to use offensive language to describe their behavior. Mr. Fuller has an audio clip from about 30 years ago where he made the exact same observation, where on the job, white men, they will come to you to talk all sorts of sexual filth about other black females and might even be your black female coworkers, but they will never ever engage in such trash about a white woman, not in your presence, not with, the black people on the job. He noted the exact same thing. And that's why I said only problem, if my only problem is they think I'm serious, that I can deal with that under the system of racism, white supremacy. If I got fired because I was too serious on my job, and particularly a construction job, I got fired because I was serious about construction, well, that's the system of white supremacy. But again, great job with the codification, with the stopwatch. That way you can codify and be precise about the amount of time that you have to spend interacting and what have you. Great effort. Just continue with that. Any other commentary folks want to get in? Last few minutes before we conclude. I will assume folks are.
Yes.
Oh, I heard someone.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. It was mentioned that that I should probably say something similar to well, I have white friends or something like that. It's something that I was doing, like a little research that I was doing. I'll probably share Saturday into my family history that I found out that I do indeed have white descendants. So that was pretty interesting that he brought that up. And I kind of thought about saying something similar to that, like, oh, well, I talked to this guy, because I do talk to certain white people there. Some of the white people that I do talk to on the job are like extreme perverts, but I mean, some of the people I talk to, so that way I don't seem too standoffish, but for the most part, I try to stay away from a lot of white people. So I will take a lot of things that were said tonight in consideration and try to apply it to my code.
If it makes sense, and if it will be of constructive value, everyone certainly have to see what'll work for your situation. With that, we will be here tomorrow. That would be Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The conclusion, thankfully, Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, all done after tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Will be here Saturday for the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Thanks for all of the folks who shared, participated, appreciated all of the commentary that we got. I hope it's helpful in terms of people understanding what's happening to us all in the area of labor, system of racism, white supremacy. With that, again, sobriety would be best. And even keep that in mind. A lot of the folks that we're being terrorized by on the job, they are not sober. For us, victims, sobriety would be best. I think Dr. Welsing and Mr. Fuller, many of the other folks that we mentioned with reverence, I think they would strongly encourage and recommend sobriety. Let's keep our brain functioning healthy, brain computer functioning healthy, so that we can crank out solutions to the problem: racist man, racist woman, racist child. If you're going to be in a vehicle, certainly you want to be buckled up and sober, driver or passenger. Race soldiers, they really take advantage of a lot of black people when we are under the influence and not capable of making quality decisions. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.